Why do actors get lost in their roles? This video is going to demonstrate how you can do the same, as well as how to avoid that negativity trap of playing a role that you don't want to internalize. Keep watching.
I'm inspired. I'm inspired.
Hey there guys, how's it going? My name is Sumed Chatterjee from the Flow Zone Academy, and I'm a flow state coach, which means that I help you feel better and perform better. Today we're talking about how actors stay in a specific role. Some of them go way off the deep end. Some of them go crazy. Some of them lose their sense of self, specifically if they're a method actor using a Stanislavski-based approach. Now there's Meisner, Stella Adler, all of these different ways and approaches towards acting. However, the method acting technique means you're actually embodying the state of the specific character that you're playing. Now, there's a specific kickback that certain actors will feel when they're acting in a specific role. Let's take the example of Benedict Cumberbatch, who plays Sherlock. Now, he talked about this kickback in terms of being very curt in his responses back to his mother when he was shooting the show. Because Sherlock's character is kind of sociopathic, you could say he's kind of not really well versed in socializing. So he experienced this kind of anger, this brash behavior in his real life. So there can be examples of where you start to internalize negativity when you're acting in a very specific role. Actors have seen this, and you might have known this as well by trying to adopt a personality. Now, at the same time, let's say that you're being mean one day, supposedly mean based on what somebody else is saying. You're being very rude, you're being very arrogant, you're being very mean. Now, does that mean that you've changed and transformed and quantum leaped into being a mean person? No, it hasn't. You see, a specific action does not determine that change. But if that same action is happening over a period of time, that starts to create different habits, different thought forms, different things that we start to recognize in ourselves, and there's a shifting taking place, right? There's a change taking place. So what I really want to emphasize in this video is repetitive action over long periods of time starts to change the neuroplasticity of the brain, okay? In my book TPM, this is very common. We have an event coming out, it's called Writing Reality at the end of this month. If you're interested, shoot me a message. This is only for elite people who actually want to change who they are, using neuroscience, using quantum physics, using different techniques like NLP and mind magic. This is actually one of those programs where we've set it up in a 3-part way where it's going to get you towards the character, towards the personality that you truly wish to embody and wish to be. So what exactly happens when a character is playing a specific role? Well, there's a specific term that I find is very interesting. Now, in positive psychology, we talk about post-traumatic growth, but I want you to think of this term, post-traumatic stress disorder. Okay, post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, this is where you're actually noticing a few of the codependence, the negativity, all the different things that you were playing in the role when you were acting in your real life, and it's showing up in different ways. And we see this examples of like Heath Ledger and different areas of this. Like, he was inspired by a guy named Tom Waits, right? And through the directing of Christopher Nolan in The Dark Knight, you notice how he incorporated those different eccentric mannerisms, leading to his eventual eccentricity in his real life. What exactly is going on here? Well, the actors don't actually forget who they are because of two things: their beliefs and their desires. They have the same beliefs and desires, which keeps them in a specific personality, which creates their personal reality, as Dr. Joe Dispenza says, right? So you want to make sure that if you're changing your personality, you want to change your beliefs and you want to change your desires to step into a newer version of you. We can just logically state that. Now, there was another study where they noticed that people who rated their friends as a specific behavior trait, they were also more likely to rate themselves as that behavioral trait. So let's say they said that their friend was confident, they would do a self-analysis and they rated their confidence really high. And it's this idea that how we see others is also how we see ourselves in this very eccentric way. Now, there is a 24-hour delay time in the time that they did that, right? So it goes back to its baseline point after that fact where they're associated with another individual or they're merging consciousness with another individual, right? So let's say that I'm channeling Einstein, for instance. I'm not going to stay as Einstein, but in that very brief moment, whatever I do afterwards, I'm going to take on some of the attributes of Einstein when I channel him. So does this make sense to you guys? Let me know in the comments if this starts to really formulate and make sense. So when you're acting, the front and midline of the brain actually shuts off in terms of thinking about the self. Those are regions that start to form our identity and start to say to ourselves, like, this is who I am. Okay, essentially that shuts off when we enter a world of acting. Also, it affects a part of the brain called the precuneus, okay? Now, this basically creates a third-person perspective. There is a splitting up of mental resources in these two parts of you. So think of almost like an alter ego, right? How Beyonce was the alter ego. There is a splitting of consciousness. There's a double consciousness when you're acting, which is very, very interesting. And I want you to make a note of this. So this is what it really comes down to. If you really want to transform your character and be different and to change your behavior, you have to choose who to mold or model, who to befriend, and who to ignore. These three things, if you mark these three things, you will morph into changing the way that you see yourself and your self-image. You will slowly start to morph like molasses over time, as I mentioned. Okay, it's going to be a slow transformation, but let me show you this image of me. Okay, this is a difference of a year or so. So really start to understand that shift and transformation can happen, but you've got to stay locked in to the type of character, the type of persona that you are creating. And really start to make sure that your social circle includes a tribe of people who resonate with your vision. So in order for you to get rid of the negativity or not play a negative role in your daily life, you have to stop hanging around negative people and individuals that are making you feel in a very specific way, because the feeling traps you in that persona. Okay? How somebody makes you feel, how they activate you, how they engage with you, how they push you to become better, all determines how you end up being in terms of your personality. If you want to learn more about this, shoot me a message. I hope this answers your question in terms of how negativity can sometimes shape us in terms of our characters. I think it's very, very important to recognize this and really start to optimize this in your daily life so you don't end up the same mistakes as those actors are doing. Of course, there's a 24-hour time where you go back to your senses again, in a sense, right? You become you again. However, at the same time, there might be a small residue of that that's left behind. So it's all about the repetition and the emotional overwhelm of the moment, right? So let's say you have a monologue scene where you're going completely so into the darkness and the pit of your depression, and you keep doing that in rehearsal. Guess what? You're gonna slowly start to sleep in more. You're going to slowly start to dim the lights more, and you'll notice these different actions coming up in your real life. So it's about consciously changing those behaviors as you notice yourself going into that different persona, in a sense. So if you have a strong enough self-identity and a self-worth, you're not going to shift. You're going to stay right where you are, and you're going to slowly merge into the version of you that you truly prefer. I hope you enjoyed this video. Have an incredible day. May the flow be with you and stay legendary. Let's get it. Boom.